Okay, hello and welcome everyone. So this video is going to be a solution walkthrough of exam 1 in microeconomic principles from winter 25. So that's how you'll find it on my Substack if you'd like to go and take that exam. So it's not there yet, but you'd go to microeconomicprinciples.substack.com. That's me. Type your email if you'd like to subscribe. I hope you do. Or click through no thanks, or maybe you're already subscribed or whatever. And you'll be able to find this exam. Also, I'll link it up on this video once it's posted there. In any case, what this video is going to be is a solution walkthrough. So if you want to get a chance to take the exam first before you see the answers, you might want to go ahead and stop the video and come back. And matter of fact, I'll probably link up the video at the end of the Substack post anyway. All right, so if you don't care about any of that, or if you've already taken the exam or whatever, here's the solution walkthrough without further delay. So there's 40 questions, multiple choice, covering core principles, demand, supply, equilibrium, shortage, surplus, and then elasticity. All right, so first question. Marginal reasoning suggests that a rational decision maker will continue whatever activity it's pursuing as long as marginal benefit is at least as large as marginal cost. So this is our optimization rule. This is the consequence of marginal reasoning, is optimally you want to produce or continue the activity or stop where marginal benefit equals marginal cost. You'll continue so long as marginal benefit is at least as big. Once marginal cost is bigger than marginal benefit, then you want to stop. You've gone too far, you actually want to reduce what you've done. Diminishing marginal benefit implies as more of the good is consumed, the additional benefit from consuming an additional unit decreases. So the idea is, imagine if you're really thirsty, the first sip of water or whatever is very refreshing. By the time you've drank a whole bottle of water, you probably don't value one more sip as much as the first, right? That's diminishing marginal benefit. If the marginal cost of producing an additional unit of a good is greater than the marginal benefit, the firm should produce less. That's what I was saying a second ago. If marginal cost is bigger than marginal benefit, you've gone too far. This firm actually would increase its profits by producing less. A consumer's willingness to pay for a good is directly influenced by, okay, well, what's a willingness to pay? The willingness to pay is the most that you'd be willing to pay for whatever is the item. Sometimes it's called your reservation price, and this is going to be basically reflecting how much you like that good. Well, that's going to be a function of the number of substitutes available, right? It's not going to be a sunk cost. We ignore that. It's not going to have anything to do with discounts, right? Because it's not how much you're expecting to pay. That's the distractor here. It doesn't matter about discounts. It matters how much do you value that good. Cost of production? Nope, it's not going to affect the buyer. What's going to matter for the buyer is what are the number of alternatives, right? And so this is going to affect how much I'm willing to pay maximally for this thing, because it's going to tell me, if you have a lot of good substitutes available, I'm going to have a much lower willingness to pay because I'd buy those things instead. Which of the following statements about sunk costs is true? Rational decision makers ignore sunk costs when making decisions. Right? So we want to ignore sunk costs. We want to pay attention to opportunity costs, but we want to ignore sunk costs. And the reason why is sunk costs have already been incurred. And so there's nothing we can do that can change having paid that cost going forward. So we might as well just ignore it and pay attention to future benefits and future costs. When a firm makes decisions based on marginal analysis, well, that's evaluating the additional cost and the additional benefit of each action. Remember, cost-benefit analysis was comparing cost of benefits, sometimes literally comparing marginal benefit to marginal cost. The marginal principle is requiring us to think about to incrementalize, to break down the total cost into what's the cost of one more unit, or to break down the total benefit into what's the cost of one more unit. And so evaluating the additional cost and the additional benefit is marginal analysis. Suppose a company has spent $1 million on developing a product, but a new technology makes the product obsolete. This means outdated prior to release. What should the company do according to economic reasoning? Well, you've already spent the $1 million. You can't get that back. And so what's relevant, though, is let's consider future costs and future benefits. You can't recover costs, right? The fact that we've already invested money is not a good reason to invest more money. The reason to invest more in this project would be, do we think the future benefits exceed the future costs? And it doesn't have anything to do with the past investment. Nope, we don't ignore marginal benefits or rely on past investments. That'd be this basically making us subject to the sunk cost fallacy. We don't want to price the product based on its sunk cost. We have to price the product based on an interaction of our cost, but also what consumers are willing to pay for it. If the marginal benefit an additional hour of studying decreases as the student studies more, this is an example of diminishing marginal benefit. Right? So each additional hour spent is less valuable than the prior. Well, that would be diminishing marginal benefit. A local coffee shop lowers its prices. As a result, sales increase by 30%. This is an example of, well, even though it says percent here, it's not an elasticity question. This is a question about, well, what's changed, and then what can we expect to occur as a result? Well, the change was the price, and then sales increased by 30%. We can think of sales as the quantity demanded, or our volume of sales. In any case, when prices change, all that can change is quantity. So it's got to be a change in quantity demanded. Can't be a shift of demand, can't be a change in supply, can't be a shift in the equilibrium price. A new study finds that drinking tea significantly improves brain function. As a result, what will happen in the market for tea? Oh, we should expect an increase in consumer tastes and preferences. That's one of our demand shifters. We expect demand for tea is going to shift to the right. If the price of a substitute, such as Pepsi for Coca-Cola, decreases, what happens to the demand for Coca-Cola? So if the price of Pepsi falls, we get an increase in quantity demanded of Pepsi, and then we get a decrease in demand, a leftward shift in demand for Coca-Cola. A rise in consumer income leads to an increase in demand for luxury watches. This implies luxury watches are normal goods. Why? Well, if we have an increase in consumer income and then an increase in demand, that's exactly a normal good, right? An inferior good would be if the income rises and then our demand falls. If a major recession hits and average incomes drop significantly, what happens to the demand for used cars? Demand for used cars should shift to the right. So the idea is recession is hit, incomes are dropping. As a result, people are going to buy more used cars and fewer new cars. So the idea is we'd expect new cars are going to be a normal good. Incomes rise, people buy more. But used cars are going to be an inferior good. As incomes fall, people will buy more. Other things equal. If the price of movie tickets increases, leading fewer people to go to the movies, what's happening? Oh, change in price. So if prices change, there can only be a change in quantity, a decrease in quantity demanded. Higher price, lower quantity demanded, that's law of demand. If the government imposes a tax on gasoline leading to higher gas prices, what will happen to the demand for electric cars? Well, it's going to shift to the right. Now, wait a second, I said if price changes, only quantity can change. So what's going on? Careful, we have two markets happening here. So the price of gas is going to rise, right? So we're going to get higher gas prices, decrease in quantity demanded of gas, right? Gas is going to be a complement for for using cars that run on gas, which means when we have this decrease in quantity demanded of gas, we'll also have a leftward shift in the demand for its complement, gas-powered vehicles. What's going to happen though is we'll have a decrease in demand for this complement good. We'll have an increase in demand for the substitute. The substitute good is electric cars. So we'll have more demand for electric cars. We actually had arguably three markets, depending on how we explain that question. Gas-powered cars, and then electric vehicles. An increase in the number of consumers in a city. Oh, that's a change in the number of buyers. That's an increase in demand. Rightward shift to demand. Which of the following would cause a shift in the demand curve for smartphones? A change in consumer preferences towards tablets, and namely would cause a decrease in demand for smartphones. A decrease in the price of smartphones? Nope, that'll be a movement along the curve. So that'd be an increase in quantity demanded. A decrease in supply. Oh, I usually do this with a PDF, so I can't really adjust this text, and now whatever. So decrease in supply of smartphones? Nope. So that will not shift demand. Remember our one cause, one effect principle. It certainly affect the price. Price would rise and we get a smaller quantity demanded, but it wouldn't shift demand. Shift in production technology? Nope. That's going to end up just shifting supply. If a new law bans advertising for sugary drinks, what's the net effect on those drinks? Well, we'd probably imagine this is going to give us a decrease in consumer tastes and preferences. Might also reduce the number of consumers. So either way, we should expect a decrease in demand. A new Technological advancement allows car manufacturers to produce vehicles at a lower cost. What happens to supply? Oh, this is an increase in supply. We're flooding the market. We're going to get a rightward shift to supply. We'd actually expect lower price and lower quantity and equilibrium, other things equal. A severe drought reduces the wheat harvest significantly. What happens in the wheat market? Well, if we have a much smaller harvest, that's a decrease in supply, leftward shift to supply. What happens in the price? An increase in the price of oil leads to higher transportation costs for delivering goods. What happens to the supply of goods? Well, if we're thinking about oil as being an important input in the rendering of the service of supplying goods, this will be a decrease in supply, a leftward shift in supply. If the price of microchips, a key input in smartphone production, falls significantly, what happens to the supply? A decrease in the price of a substitute is going to lead to an increase in supply. So supply will shift to the right. Regulation requiring costly safety upgrades in a factory is introduced. What happens to supply? That'll reduce supply. It'll make supply more costly. Regardless of the price, we'll get less produced at all possible prices. Which of the following scenarios would lead to an increase in the quantity supplied of a good? So here we're looking for a change in price, right? If I'm looking for an increase in quantity, you're just scanning for a change in price. So government provides subsidies. That's going to be this is going to probably affect demand, maybe an increase in demand, or could increase supply if this is subsidizing the cost. New technology improves production efficiency. That's going to increase supply. Costs of raw materials decrease. That's also going to increase supply. Arguably, A, B, and D all increase supply, but we don't want an increase in quantity supply. We want an increase in quantity supplied. That happens if the price of the good rises. We move up the supply curve. If the price of coffee increases due to a supply shock, what happens in the market for tea? So, namely, this would have been a leftward shift to supply, leading us to a decrease in supply, higher price, smaller quantity demanded of tea. What do we expect is going to happen higher? Okay, two different goods I was stumbling over. So price of coffee increases due to a leftward shift in supply of coffee, higher price of coffee, lower quantity demanded of coffee. Instead, consumers are going to substitute for tea. And so we get an increase in demand for tea. A major technological advancement reduces production costs for smartphones. How does this impact the smartphone market? Well, this technological advancement, I think we mentioned something like this earlier in the exam, is going to lead to an increase in supply, basically flooding the market, right? Lower equilibrium price, higher equilibrium quantity. A sudden increase in the price of raw materials causes a leftward shift in supply. What happens to the market? Leftward shift in supply. Other things equal, so we're assuming a stationary demand, we're going to get a higher price, lower quantity. So equilibrium price rises, equilibrium quantity decreases. During the holidays, demand for toys increases significantly. What's the effect on the toy market? Well, if we have an increase in demand, we're assuming, one cause, one effect principle, so we're not going to have anything affecting supply. We just have a stationary supply curve. This is going to be consumers increasing their enthusiasm for whatever are these toys. We're going to get a higher price and higher quantity. If supply and demand decrease at the same time, what happens to the equilibrium quantity? So if they're both decreasing, both are a recipe for a lower quantity. What about the price? Well, if demand decreases more, price will fall. If supply decreases more than demand does, price will rise. But either way, all we were asked about there was the effect on quantity. It'll be smaller. Which of the following is the possible effect on the market for fresh vegetables, a normal good, if consumer incomes increase? What happens if consumer incomes increase to a normal good? We're going to get we're going to get an increase in demand. But we're going to care about, actually the answer here is about what's happening on the supply side. The increase in demand is going to lead to a higher price. Tracing that through to the supply side, we'll get a higher quantity supplied. We're definitely not going to get a lower quantity demanded. We're not going to get a change in supply, right? Because on the supply side, what's happening is a change in price due to this rightward shift to demand. Demand for fresh vegetables decreases. Nope, that's not going to happen. And no, it's not that none of these are correct. It's that we're going to get a rightward shift in the demand for fresh vegetables because they're a normal good and consumer incomes have increased against a stationary supply curve that gives us a higher price, so we get a higher quantity supplied. A 15% increase in the price of bottled water leads to a 30% decrease in quantity demanded. What's the price elasticity? Price elasticity is percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. So we'll have minus 30 divided by 15 is minus 2. If price elasticity of demand is minus 0.4, what happens to total revenue if price increases? Empirical evidence or empirical estimates for the price elasticity of demand for tobacco tend to be pretty close to 0.4. What happens to total revenue if price rises? Total revenue is going to increase. If demand is inelastic, meaning it's between 0 and 1 in absolute value, or think about how we got this inelastic demand. We had a larger denominator, a smaller numerator. The numerator is the change in quantity, denominator is change in price. We had a big change in price, small change in quantity. Okay, so this means if we raise the price, we get a big boost from the higher price to total revenue. And then, of course, there's going to be a penalty because at the higher price, by the law of demand, people are going to buy less. But the price increase is going to swamp the decrease in quantity when demand is inelastic. The opposite is true if demand is elastic. If demand is elastic, if this was minus 4 instead of 0.4, then revenue would go down when you raise price. If demand is elastic, like if it was minus 4, you'd have to lower the price to increase total revenue. If income elasticity for organic food is 1.8, that's elastic. This means organic food is, income elasticity, that's income elastic. So the correct answer is C, a normal good. So income elasticity being positive tells us it's a normal good. 6% increase in income results in a 4% decrease in demand for instant noodles. So we have a 6% increase in income, 4% decrease in demand. So this is what? Minus 4 divided by 6. But we don't care about any of that. It's going to be minus 2/3. The negative gets us there. So increase with decrease tells us, that's all we need. Sign negative tells us that we have an inferior good. The cross elasticity between butter and margarine has been estimated at 1.5. It's positive. That's enough to tell us that they're substitutes. A ride-sharing company increases its fares by 20%, resulting in a 10% decrease in rides. What does this tell us about the price elasticity of demand? So price rose by 20%, quantity fell by 10%. This is going to give us an elasticity of minus 10 over 2. Minus 10 over 20, so this is going to be minus 1/2 as our elasticity. That's inelastic because we have a much bigger change in price, much smaller change in quantity. Also because it's between 0 and 1 in absolute value, but thinking about this in terms of change in price, change in quantity is more helpful. All right, so a 10% increase in the price of beef results in a 5% decrease. 10% increase in price of beef results in a 5% increase in demand for chicken. What does this indicate? This is two different goods. We're getting a cross elasticity. We're getting increase, which means it's going to be positive, so we know we have substitutes. You could actually calculate the elasticity, the cross elasticity. Here, that cross elasticity would be 5/10 or 1/2. It's between 0 and 1, so it's pretty inelastic. It tells us that they are substitutes because it's positive, but they're not really closely related substitutes because this is between 0 and 1. A recession lowers consumer incomes. What happens to the equilibrium price and quantity in the market for an entertainment venue like a bowling alley? Well, we have to know if it's a normal or inferior good. Oh, but that's part of the question, right? So consumer incomes are going to lead to lower consumer incomes would lead to a smaller price and smaller quantity if we have a normal good. So let's see, decrease. Oh, but that was matched with inferior. And if it's an inferior good, then lower incomes are going to lead to an increase in demand. So I'm looking for higher price, higher quantity. If it's inferior, sure enough, that's the one that shows up here. All right, so then lastly, it's kind of falling off the page. If demand is 12 minus Q, supply is 2 plus Q, at a price of 3, there is a shortage because this is going to be a below equilibrium price. And then if at a price of 7, this is going to be a surplus because it's an above equilibrium price. So the quick way to see why this would be a shortage is because this price is just barely above the minimum cost to operate in this market. And so we're going to bet that with this vertical intercept of demand that this is probably a below equilibrium price. and then this is going to be above equilibrium. The way to do this like way more carefully is to actually calculate it out. So I'm going to have following calculation, set demand equal to supply. Solving algebraically, I'm going to move the 2 to the other side, and I'm going to move the q to the other side. So I'm going to get a quantity of 5. Okay. And then my prices, these are inverse demand. This price is a function of quantity. So let's see. Oh, did I do this? Yeah, sorry. Of course, here then I find my mistake. Awesome. All right, so price, you see it immediately, don't you? Yeah, I'm silly. And then this is going to be 7. So this was not a surplus. This was equilibrium. I should have been more suspicious of that when I was going over this. But the correct answer there is we have an equilibrium at a price of 7 because my equilibrium quantity is 5, and my equilibrium quantity of 5 corresponds to a price of 7. And so we have equilibrium at a price of 7. Okay, so then record your answers, and we're all set. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you caught my mistake here before I did. If so, good. Congratulations, very very good. Hope you liked the video. Share it with somebody who's going to benefit from it, and then I'll see you next time.